You are sitting in the driver's seat of your car, staring blankly at the steering wheel. The engine is off. The parking garage is completely quiet, save for the faint hum of traffic outside. Your hands are shaking just enough to make holding your phone difficult. You just got the call, or perhaps it was the closed-door meeting. The one where they let you go, the one where you were passed over for the promotion again, or the one where she calmly explained that she just does not feel the spark anymore. You whisper to the empty space, "But I did everything right. You played by the rules. You stayed late when everyone else went home. You never complained about the workload. You compromised your own boundaries to keep the peace. And yet, here you are, discarded like an outdated piece of machinery." The unsettling truth that you are about to swallow is this: you were not punished for doing something wrong. You were punished for being entirely, flawlessly predictable. From the moment you enter the educational system, you are fed a very specific, very dangerous narrative. You are taught that obedience is the ultimate virtue, that hard work speaks for itself, that if you simply keep your head down, do exactly what is asked of you, and cause no friction, the world will eventually turn around and hand you your rightful reward. We will call this the good soldier syndrome. It is a deeply comforting fantasy because it makes the chaos of human nature feel manageable. It tells you that there is a cosmic ledger tracking your goodness, and that justice will inevitably balance the scales, but the game does not break you. Your illusions do. When you operate as the good soldier, you genuinely believe you are building a massive reservoir of goodwill. You think your boss notices the weekends you sacrificed. You assume your partner values the times you swallowed your pride to avoid an argument. You think your friends appreciate that you are always the one driving, always the one paying, always the one who answers the phone at 2 in the morning. But human behavior, stripped of polite societal conditioning, operates on a much colder, much more mechanical logic. When you are endlessly accommodating, people do not look at you and see a saint. They see a guaranteed baseline. They see an asset that requires absolutely zero maintenance. Think about the machinery in your own life. You only take the car to the mechanic when the engine starts making a terrifying noise. The quiet, reliable parts are completely ignored, expected to perform perfectly until the day they break and are immediately replaced. This is exactly how Machiavelli understood power dynamics over 500 years ago. He looked past the moral pretense of society and observed that human beings are, at their core, creatures of profound self-interest. They are naturally inclined to conserve energy and take the path of least resistance. If you offer yourself as the path of least resistance, you will be walked on, not necessarily out of malice, but out of simple, unconscious convenience. Let us look closer at the mechanics of this exploitation in your daily life. You believe your unwavering loyalty is a shield. In reality, your blind loyalty is a massive, glowing vulnerability. Imagine a corporate environment where a manager is forced to cut the department's budget or fire a team member. Who do they target? Do they fire the volatile, slightly dangerous employee who might cause a scene, involve human resources, or take key clients with them? No, they fire the good soldier, because the good soldier will pack their cardboard box quietly. The good soldier will sign the severance agreement without reading the fine print. The good soldier will walk out the door without making a sound. Convinced that maintaining their dignity is better than fighting for their survival, you are targeted precisely because you are safe. This dynamic plays out identical in the modern dating market. You swipe right, you match, you go on the dates, you text back immediately, you bend your schedule to accommodate theirs. You make your interests so painfully obvious that all the tension evaporates from the interaction. And then you watch, bewildered, as they lose interest and chase someone who treats them with mild indifference. You call them toxic, you call yourself unlucky. But the truth is much colder. By removing all friction, you removed all value. You became a solved puzzle, and the human mind discards solved puzzles to look for new challenges. This is the tragic paradox of playing by the book. The more predictable your goodness becomes, the less value it holds in the marketplace of human relations. To the Machiavellian mind, your unwavering compliance is not a moral triumph. It is a tactical flaw. It signals that you possess no leverage. It broadcasts to the room that you are willing to absorb extreme discomfort so that others do not have to. And rest assured, people will gladly let you absorb their discomfort forever. You must realize that most people do not wake up plotting how to ruin your life or steal your energy. They simply possess an instinctual, animalistic radar for boundaries. They push, and if they feel no resistance, they push further. Your constant availability, your eagerness to please, your absolute refusal to say the word no. These are not virtues in the real world. These are the behavioral signatures of prey. To stop being a victim of your own goodness, you must first accept a reality that feels deeply uncomfortable. Fairness is a man-made concept, entirely absent from the natural laws of power. The universe does not keep a ledger of your late nights. Your silent suffering does not earn you a place at the front of the line. There is only leverage, perception, and consequence. The people who rise, the ones who command respect, dictate their own terms, and move through the world untouchable, are not playing by the rules you were taught. They understand that society's rules were designed to keep the masses manageable. They do not rely on hope. They rely on strategy. They do not wait to be chosen. They engineer situations where they cannot be ignored. If you want to survive and thrive in this environment, you have to completely dismantle the good soldier. You have to stop broadcasting your absolute compliance. You have to stop being an open book that anyone can read, highlight, and throw away. The very first step to reclaiming your autonomy is to forcefully rewrite the signals you send out into the world. You were punished not because you failed, but because you were predictable. And in the arena of human nature, predictability is the first scent of blood. Before we proceed, I want to step back and offer a psychological reality check. Waking up to these dynamics is mentally exhausting. It shatters the comforting worldview you were raised to believe, but recognizing how human nature actually operates is not about becoming a cynic. It is about cognitive survival. To those of you who subscribe, support this channel, and return here week after week, thank you. You are part of the rare fraction of society that prefers the cold friction of truth over the warm comfort of a lie. The path of the strategist is quiet and often solitary, but you are not walking it alone. Let us continue. Because predictability is the scent of blood, the very first thing you must do to survive is stop bleeding. And in the theater of human dynamics, the way you bleed is through your words. Every time you rush to explain yourself, every time you frantically defend your actions against a minor criticism, you are leaking vital data to a predator. You are handing over the exact blueprints of your nervous system, showing them precisely what bothers you, what you fear, and how easily your reality can be destabilized. Picture a high-stakes meeting. It could be a corporate boardroom, a tense family gathering, or a confrontation with a partner. Someone subtly insults a junior executive. They make a passive-aggressive comment about a missed deadline or a perceived flaw. Watch what the junior executive does. They immediately lean forward. Their pitch raises. They begin talking rapidly, constructing an elaborate defense, citing emails, offering context, and apologizing for misunderstandings. Now, look at the senior strategist in the room. If a similar comment is directed at them, they do not lean forward. They do not raise their pitch. They lean back. They hold eye contact, and they let a suffocating, heavy silence fall over the table. They offer absolute nothing. In that moment, the power dynamic violently shifts. The person who made the insult suddenly feels the weight of the silence. They begin to squirm. They start adding qualifiers to their insult, backpedaling, nervous that they have crossed an invisible line. The junior executive lost all respect by fighting for it. The senior strategist commanded the entire room by simply refusing to participate in the skirmish. We are conditioned to believe that we must answer every accusation. We are taught that if someone attacks our character, it is our moral duty to correct the record and prove our inherent goodness. But the game does not break you. Your illusions do. Your illusion that words equate to power is exactly what strips you of it. To the Machiavellian mind, entering a defensive posture is an admission of weakness. It signals that you view the other person as an authority figure whose approval you must earn back. When you over-explain, you are begging for permission to be seen as valid. You are telling the manipulator that their trivial comment successfully penetrated your emotional armor and hijacked your central nervous system. Manipulators rely on this mechanism entirely. They will intentionally throw out a tiny, insignificant piece of bait. A slight hesitation when you suggest an idea, a backhanded compliment about your appearance, or a delayed text message. They do this simply to watch you scramble. They want to see you send 3 paragraphs of text in response to their one-word answer. They want to watch you spend 20 minutes justifying a harmless decision you made. It is a test of emotional control, and every time you react you fail, you prove that they hold the leash. To reclaim your power, you must master the tactical pause. You must learn to weaponize silence. Silence is the most terrifying response you can give to a human being because it is a completely blank canvas. When you refuse to react, the other person is forced to project their own internal anxieties into the void you created. If they are insecure, they will assume you are silently judging them. If they are guilty, they will assume you know their secret. By simply shutting your mouth, you force the opponent to negotiate against themselves. Imagine implementing this tomorrow. A colleague tries to undermine you in an email chain. Instead of writing a fiery defensive essay that makes you look unhinged, you reply with a single sentence, or you speak to them in person and simply say, "Okay." Then you stop talking. You let the silence stretch. You watch them become intensely uncomfortable. You let them carry the burden of making the interaction less awkward. In social dynamics, the person who speaks the least controls the frame. When you stop offering your thoughts freely, your words suddenly become a scarce commodity. People begin to lean in when you finally decide to speak. They start seeking your approval because you are no longer handing it out like cheap flyers on a sidewalk. This requires a profound suppression of your ego. Your ego wants to scream. Your ego wants to win the argument and prove that you are right and they are wrong. But you must understand that arguing with a manipulator is like wrestling in the mud with an animal. You both get dirty, but the animal enjoys it. You do not win by having the best counter-argument. You win by entirely removing yourself from the psychological battlefield they designed. You become a shadow. You become an enigma. When you replace predictability with mystery, people do not know how to handle you. They cannot exploit what they cannot understand. If they do not know what angers you, they cannot trigger you. If they do not know your desperate ambitions, they cannot dangle them over your head as leverage. Your privacy is your fortress, and your silence is the moat that keeps the parasites on the outside. You will feel a cold, terrifying sense of empowerment. The first time you execute this properly, you will watch someone attempt to bait you, and instead of taking the hook, you will simply observe them as if they are a fascinating insect trapped in a jar. You will realize that you never had to play their game at all. Silence builds your armor, and observation loads your weapon. But knowing when to stay quiet is only half the strategy. The other half is knowing how to draw the line. And more importantly, what happens when someone inevitably crosses it? It is time to look at the architecture of respect and why your current blueprint is completely unstable. Think about a relationship in your life right now where you feel undervalued. Perhaps it is that friend who only ever reaches out when their own life is in crisis. using you as an emotional dumpster before vanishing again. Or maybe it is the manager who routinely drops high-priority weekend work on your desk on a Friday afternoon. While your colleagues leave early without consequence, you sit there, harboring intense, quiet resentment. You think to yourself, how can they not see how disrespectful this is? How can they treat me this way after everything I have done for them? Prepare yourself, because here comes the dagger. They treat you this way because you trained them to. You invited the parasite by leaving the front door wide open. We love to blame other people for their audacity. We label them narcissists, users, or toxic personalities. But the harsh reality of human nature is that a predator can only consume what is freely offered to them. Disrespect is rarely an accident. It is an exact mirrored reflection of the boundaries you have failed to enforce. If a boss dumps weekend work on you and you complain about it, but you still complete it by Monday morning, you did not set a boundary. You simply complained while consenting. You taught them that your time is fundamentally worthless, and that your compliance can always be bought for the low price of minor friction. The game does not break you, your illusions do. And one of the most fatal illusions we carry is the belief that love, kindness, and extreme accommodation will somehow organically generate respect they do not. This is the core tenet of Machiavelli's philosophy that makes modern society deeply uncomfortable. He understood that love is a notoriously fragile bond. It is maintained only by a sense of moral obligation, and human beings are exceptionally good at breaking moral obligations the moment it becomes advantageous for them to do so. Fear, however, or in modern terms, the healthy apprehension of consequence, is a bond that never fails. Do not misunderstand this. We are not talking about ruling your office or your household like a tyrant. We are not talking about cruelty. We are talking about the mechanics of boundary enforcement. Respect is not given. It is extracted. It is extracted by demonstrating that there is a severe, immovable cost to crossing your lines. If there is no cost, there is no boundary. There is only a suggestion. Let us break down how you construct this architecture of respect. The mistake most people make is believing that a boundary must be a dramatic confrontation. They wait until they are boiling over with resentment, and then they explode, demanding respect and listing years of accumulated grievances. This is weak. This is emotional flailing. True Machiavellian boundary setting is entirely devoid of emotion. It is a simple, cold recalibration of access. If that friend only calls when they need a favor, you do not write them a heartfelt paragraph about how used you feel. You simply stop answering. When they finally corner you, you reply, "I am unavailable for this." No explanation, no apology. If the boss drops work on your desk on Friday at 5, you do not throw a tantrum. You look at them with flat, dead eyes and say, "I will review this first thing Monday morning," and then you walk out the door. When you do this, you will immediately trigger a reaction. They will push back. They will try to guilt trip you. They will act shocked, because you are disrupting the ecosystem they have comfortably dominated. This is where the weak fold. They feel a spike of anxiety. They panic and they immediately revert to the good soldier to smooth things over. But you must hold the line. You must let them crash violently into the wall you just built. When they realize the wall is solid, when they realize that guilt-tripping you no longer works, that your anger is controlled, and that access to your energy has been permanently restricted, the dynamic shifts forever. They will not necessarily love you more, but they will absolutely respect you. They will think twice before asking you for a favor. They will moderate their tone when they speak to you. They will suddenly find someone else to dump their Saturday workload onto. You train people how to treat you by what you allow to survive in your presence. If you tolerate disrespect, you are cultivating a garden of parasites. If you violently uproot disrespect the moment it sprouts, you create an environment where only mutual value can thrive. To execute this, you have to kill the part of yourself that desperately needs to be universally liked. Being universally liked is the goal of a politician, and politicians are inherently compromised. You must aim to be universally respected, which requires accepting that some people will be deeply frustrated by your refusal to be useful to them. You are revoking their VIP access to your life, and they will throw a tantrum at the gate. Let them. You train people how to treat you by what you allow to survive. But enforcing a boundary requires something most people are terrified to cultivate: the willingness to actually lose something. It is time to dissect the ultimate weapon in the Machiavellian arsenal, the weapon of detachment. Visualize a high-stakes negotiation. It does not matter if it is a salary discussion, the purchase of a house, or the defining conversation of a romantic relationship. Two people sit across from each other. One person desperately needs the deal to go through. They need the job to validate their self-worth. They need the relationship to avoid the terror of being alone. Their breathing is slightly elevated. Their eyes are searching for reassurance. The other person does not need it. They want it, perhaps. They see the value in it. But if the terms are not favorable, they are entirely prepared to stand up, shake hands, and walk out the door without a second thought. Who controls that room? The person who needs the outcome the least completely controls the person who is desperate for it. This is an unbreakable law of human nature. Neediness is a leash you willingly hand to someone else. When you broadcast desperation, you signal that you have no other options. You signal that you are a captive audience, and human beings, even the well-intentioned ones, will naturally devalue anything that feels guaranteed. If an employer knows you will never quit because you are terrified of the job market, they will never give you a raise. If a partner knows you will never leave no matter how poorly they treat you, they will stop trying to keep you. Most people operate from a baseline of constant psychological need. They need their boss's approval to feel competent. They need their social circle's validation to feel relevant. They are chained to external outcomes, which makes them incredibly easy to manipulate. To break these chains, you must cultivate Machiavellian detachment. Detachment is heavily misunderstood. People hear the word and they imagine a cold, apathetic robot who cares about nothing and no one. That is not detachment. That is depression true. Machiavellian detachment means caring intelligently. It means you invest heavily in the process, you bring immense value to the table, but you utterly sever your emotional dependency on the result. You separate your core identity from the unpredictable chaos of external events. The game does not break you, your illusions do. And the illusion that you must secure a specific outcome to survive is the exact mechanism that keeps you paralyzed. How do you build this? How do you actually become detached in a world that constantly demands your emotional investment? You do it by building internal sovereignty. You aggressively cultivate options. You do not rely on a single income stream, a single mentor, or a single social group for your entire sense of stability. When you have options, walking away is no longer a catastrophic risk. It is simply a strategic pivot. Furthermore, you must practice the art of letting go in real time. When someone pulls away from you, your instinct is to chase them, to text them again, to ask what went wrong. Detachment dictates that when someone pulls away, you let them go, you do not chase. You do not negotiate your own worth. You simply observe their retreat and reallocate your energy elsewhere. You must adopt the mindset of amor fati, a love of fate. Whatever happens is exactly what was required for your ultimate advantage. If they leave, they were a liability. If the deal falls through, it was a trap. When you operate with this level of psychological freedom, something terrifying and beautiful happens. People can feel it. They can sense the absence of desperation in your aura. You become incredibly magnetic. People are drawn to those who do not need them. They are fascinated by individuals who are entirely self-contained because it is so incredibly rare. You will find that the moment you stop desperately gripping the steering wheel of your life, the very things you were chasing begin to turn around and chase you. You will no longer be paralyzed by the fear of loss. You will walk into every room knowing that whether they accept you or reject you, your internal empire remains completely untouched. The moment you no longer need them to survive, you become the most dangerous person in the room. But survival is just the baseline. To truly become untouchable, you must learn how to strike. Look closely at the people in your immediate environment. In any hierarchy, whether it is a corporate office, a family structure, or a social circle, you will observe two very distinct archetypes. The first is the chronic overthinker. This is the person who spends their entire life waiting for the perfect conditions. They wait for absolute certainty. They wait for a guarantee of success. They will draft a single simple email and stare at it for an hour, terrified of offending someone or making a misstep, before finally softening every sentence and hitting send. They live in a permanent state of preparation, always getting ready to act, but never actually acting. The world loves the overthinker. The world encourages the overthinker because the overthinker is utterly paralyzed, making them a threat to absolutely no one but themselves. The second archetype is the calculated strategist. They do not wait for the perfect moment. They understand that perfect alignment is a myth, a comforting lie designed to keep cowards in their place. The strategist moves first. They create the friction. They dictate the frame of reality, forcing the world to react to them, rather than spending their life reacting to the world. This is the Machiavellian strike. There is a profound difference between being bold and being reckless. Recklessness is acting on unchecked emotion. It is lashing out because you are angry, desperate, or trying to prove a point to an audience that does not care. Boldness, true, lethal boldness, is acting with cold intention. It is deciding exactly what you want, assessing the baseline risk, and executing the move with such absolute conviction that the people around you simply step out of the way. When you move with absolute certainty, you hijack the psychological framing of any room you walk into. You must understand that human beings are naturally indecisive creatures. They are deeply uncomfortable with ambiguity. They are constantly looking around, desperately searching for someone to follow, someone to tell them what the reality of the situation actually is. If you step into that void with quiet authority, if you assume the leadership role without waiting for permission, people will hand you the power willingly. Authority is rarely given. It is almost always assumed. But to execute this, to make the world naturally bend to your initiative, you must possess the final piece of the architecture. You must build an untouchable identity. Your identity is the shadow that enters the room before you do. It is your reputation. Most people have a reputation for being accommodating, which in the realm of power dynamics is simply a polite word for weak. An untouchable identity is built on a foundation of absolute, terrifying consistency. It means you never make a threat that you are not entirely prepared to execute. It means you never set a boundary that you later abandon because the silence became socially uncomfortable. It means your yes is an ironclad contract, and your no is a massive, impenetrable brick wall. Think about the most intimidating, respected person you have ever met. Notice how they operate. They rarely have to raise their voice. They rarely have to argue or fight for their space. Their mere presence dictates the behavior of the people around them. Colleagues do not interrupt them in meetings. Friends do not make them the punchline of a joke. This is not magic. It is the result of years of meticulous behavioral conditioning. They have trained the ecosystem to recognize that their time, energy, and respect are highly exclusive commodities. They have built an invisible field of gravity, and everything in their orbit naturally falls into line out of self-preservation. You can begin building this gravity tomorrow morning. It starts with small, deliberate withdrawals of your accessibility. When you make a decision, do not ask the room for validation. State your course of action and let the silence follow. When someone tries to push your limit, hold eye contact and give a flat, emotionless refusal. Stop apologizing for taking up space. Stop softening your emails with unnecessary pleasantries to make yourself seem harmless. You must stop trying to be harmless. A harmless person is simply a victim waiting for a predator to find them. You must become dangerous, but keep that danger under strict voluntary control. The game does not break you, your illusions do. You have spent years operating under the illusion that if you were just a little bit nicer, a little bit more patient, a little bit more selfless, the world would eventually look down and reward you. Look at where that philosophy has gotten you. Look at the resentment you carry in your chest. Look at the people who have casually climbed over you while you were busy trying to play the good soldier. The system is not broken. It is functioning exactly as it was designed to. It is designed to extract maximum value from those who do not understand the rules. But you are no longer one of them. You now possess the blueprint. You understand the lethal nature of predictability. You know the paralyzing power of the tactical pause. You know how to enforce boundaries with the cold detachment of a strategist, and you know how to sever the chains of neediness that kept you trapped. What you do with this knowledge will define the trajectory of the rest of your life. You can close this video, go to sleep, and wake up tomorrow as the exact same predictable, accommodating asset you have always been. You can go back to being safely ignored, or you can make a choice. You can choose to operate on a completely different frequency. You can choose to strip away the emotional fat, observe the exact psychological mechanics of the people around you, and move with a quiet, lethal precision. You can no longer claim ignorance. The curtain has been pulled back. The mechanics of the machine have been exposed. Tomorrow morning, the game continues. Play accordingly. Before we close, a final psychological truth. Implementing this mindset will initially take a toll on your nervous system. You will lose people, you will face resistance. That discomfort is not a sign of failure. It is the exact price of your newly reclaimed autonomy. To those of you who silently support this channel, who engage and share these lessons, thank you. Your presence here proves there is still a demographic willing to look reality directly in the eye without blinking. Keep observing, keep studying, and keep protecting your energy. Stay sharp, stay untouchable. And we will see you in the next lesson.